Polygon has been sold with mass layoffs hitting the outlet. So this is a subject I wasn't sure if I was actually going to be talking about or doing a video on or anything like that. But I figured I might as well just because, it does involve the gaming industry as far as gaming journalism and everything like that. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, Polygon was a gaming website that kind of did articles and news kind of on different types of gaming information and everything like that. Pretty much one of the websites, you know what I mean, someone like myself would kind of look at when it comes down to trying to figure out what's going on in the gaming world and everything like that. Because when it comes down to me making these videos, that's kind of the main direction I've been taking the past few months since I've been started my channel, which was to pretty much go onto different gaming websites, check out which articles I would like to see, the with some subject or something like that would have something I would want to talk about. So I go through a lot of different articles each day and just kind of go through which ones I want to go talk about, which things that grab my interest. If it's something I don't really have too much knowledge on or I don't really know too much about, I try to just avoid those. That is one of the reasons why there are, like, things that can be happening in the gaming world that would be pretty big or drastic, but I just personally don't really discuss because, like I said, either I don't know too much about the subject itself or it's just something that doesn't really grab my interest. Now, when it comes down to Polygon, this was one of those websites, if I'm not mistaken, from when I first started, I was actually using as kind of like a reference to kind of look up stuff and everything like that. But I don't know. I just, with this article, I went and looked back on the website itself just to double check to see if there was anything that I would have been able to kind of in articles or anything like that. But I just noticed this was one of the websites. There's a few of them. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there's a few different websites that I had that I would go to kind of look up, information and everything like that, that eventually I just got rid of. This was one of them. Kotaku was one of them. I think it was IGN as well. Those are like the three that I can think of off the top of my head. There was a few other ones, but either the articles just weren't something I wanted to read, or they were just put in a way that I didn't really grab my interest, or they just had subjects on them that were just kind of stupid, like, the way that the direction that they decided to go when doing some of the articles on it. So seeing that this information it came out when it came down to Polygon wasn't really something that shocked me too much. So for anyone that doesn't know, obviously, Polygon got sold off by Vox Media to Valnet. And the thing that was a little bit surprising to me was that Valnet is in charge of some other gaming companies like The Gamer, Games Rant, and those are two websites that I tend to actually use still to look up some of the articles and the information and everything like that. But one of the things I noticed, especially with The Gamer, I noticed it somewhat with Game Rant, but not as much as, let's say, with The Gamer. They have a lot of weird articles that they write. There's a lot of weird articles. It seems like they are one of those gaming websites that has journalists that just don't really agree with a lot of what gamers like myself kind of have to say. Now, I use some of the articles because every once in a while, you know what I mean, there are some articles you'll see on there that do have some good information, have something that's actually worth discussing or looking into, kind of a thing. But the fact that they decided to get rid of Polygon while they have those two gaming websites available still, I feel like just kind of goes to show how bad Polygon was. And one of the main reasons that so many people have been against this, because I've been seeing a lot of people that have kind of like criticizing Polygon and everything like that, is due to the fact that they are a gaming website, that talks about gaming and everything like that. But a lot of the times they get really into, let's say, like politics, or just try to be like almost argumentative with what a lot of gamers want, or kind of criticize gamers for having certain, kind of either ideas or things that they want to see in their games, kind of a thing. They like, I feel like this was one of those websites that have articles that were kind of criticizing gamers, for instance, like with Stellar Blade. Now, I did a video yesterday in regards to Stellar Blade being able to make the director one of the top 50th richest people in Korea. And yeah, when it came down to some of the articles in the games journalists and individuals such as that were kind of criticizing the game itself, you kind of start to understand why, these gaming websites, these articles that are being written by these games journalists just aren't something that people really want to look into, because they don't really have the gamers in mind when it comes down to some of the stuff that they write. And one of the bad aspects of that, from what I've heard, is that a lot of gaming journalists, they don't really care about gaming. They don't really care about gaming. They don't really care about what gamers want, because of the fact that a lot of them, from what I've heard, and this isn't something I know from personal experience, but from what I've heard and what I've seen, is that people mention that they look at game journalism as kind of like a lower tier form of journalism. They, a lot of them, from what I've heard, said that they would rather be doing stuff for, like, the New York Times or the Washington Post and stuff like that, but they haven't been able to actually get to that level yet, which is why you'll see certain websites, certain articles for gaming websites that talk about political stuff and get into politics and stuff like that, because they want to use this as like an outlet to try to push them up to those types of journalism. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. You know what I mean? If you want to work for those types of companies, but at the same time, like, don't start off with like gaming and stuff like that, especially if it's something you genuinely don't care about. Because I remember being younger and reading. I used to get a Game Informer magazine from, I think it was GameStop, every month, and I loved it, man. It was one of those things. I would, open up the magazine, look at the still shots of games that would be coming up, and just get into it. And that was like one of the few times as a kid that I would actually be into reading, because I wasn't a big reader when I was younger. I mean, it's kind of funny now, considering that, like, part of the videos, part of the channel is me reading articles and stuff like that. But yeah, when I was younger, reading to me was always something that I felt was so boring, and it was just something I never really got into. But I remember I used to really get into those types of magazines back in the day. And one of the ones that really comes to mind that I can think of was when Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess was coming out. It was one of those things that, it wasn't released yet, and I just remember seeing still shots of, like, Link in the ranch and everything like that, and kind of some of the enemies that you were gonna be fighting and everything, and just going through the article and just reading it. And I remember it was like 2 or 3, it might have been like 3 or 4 pages of just text that was just describing what the game was gonna be about, what was to come. And I remember just sitting there reading it and reading it, and by the end of it, I remember thinking, like, damn, I feel like I haven't read that much in so long. You know what I mean? Like, or like ever, because I was so young. So seeing that kind of stuff was always something that I thought would have been so cool, was to be able to be a games journalist and be able to play these games and then write about it, and give your thoughts on what they're about and everything like that. So just to see that the direction that games journalism has gone in recent years, and how you get these people that don't really seem to care about this stuff, but are put in these positions where they're in charge to talk about it, it's just always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And it's always been something that's really bothered me, especially considering that it seems like a lot of them don't really care about gaming in general. So when it comes down to companies like Polygon or Kotaku that get into this type of, political aspect when it comes down to gaming, it's just unfortunate, and it's really dumb. You know what I mean? You got all these different journalists here that are, like, sad that they're not going to be working with these companies anymore. And you know what I mean? At the end of the day, it is sad whenever someone does get laid off, because it's not necessarily their fault. It's pretty much the whim of the company that they work for. But when you look at a lot of these games journalists, a lot of the times, they're, like I said, they're not real gamers, and they're not real gaming fans. They're pretty much just activists that are, writing about video games. Because one of the things I really think back, and I'm not sure off the top of my head if it was from, let's say, like Kotaku or Polygon, but it was like when the PS5 was first released, and it was one of those things where I don't even think Trump was in office, and they're supposed to be doing a review on the PS5, but somehow it became like them talking about Donald Trump and, like, him as when he was the president. I think this was after he had already been taken out of office. So stuff like that, it's like people don't want to read about politics when you're into video games. Like, video games is the genre, like the medium that we go to get away from stuff like politics, or, like, religious talks and stuff like that. Like, it's a way to get away from some of that stuff and just be able to kind of unwind and kind of let loose for a little bit. So yeah, man, seeing that this is the direction that kind of went with Polygon isn't too surprising, like I've said. And it's one of those things. Hopefully this will be, a good change for the gaming industry, and something that we can see more. We'll see actual game developers or I'm sorry, game journalists that actually care about, video games and the development of them. And, obviously with mediums that you have now, like, here, like with YouTube and people that are like myself that are actually going to be talking about this type of stuff that are actually gamers that really love this type of, aspect of gaming and everything like that. I'm really hoping that those are going to be the ones that really people start going to, as opposed to these journalists who clearly don't care about this stuff. When, especially when when people talk about how, there's certain game journalists that when they talk about playing a game and everything like that, how they just like simple tasks that they can do, being on like easy mode is still like a hassle for them just to get through a game. Well, you have people that are true gamers that can go through like the most difficult difficulty and be able to play it multiple times. So it is one of those things that I'm like I said, I'm hoping this is something that takes a good direction for gamers as well as the gaming industry, and hopefully it's a good change that we'll be able to see. So, per usual, like I say, only time will tell. You know what I mean? We'll only know as time progresses and as we move forward into the gaming industry and everything like that. But I'm really hoping that we start seeing more positive changes into the gaming world, as opposed to a lot of this stuff that's been kind of holding it back and bringing it down, in my opinion. So yeah, just a little rant I kind of wanted to give in regards to this type of stuff, and just discuss what my thoughts were on it. So those are my thoughts on that. Yeah, if you guys agree with what I have to say or disagree, please let me know in the comments. Like, I really would like to know your guys' opinion on this type of stuff, because like I said, this is something I've ever since I was younger, I've always thought about. And so I would really like to kind of get where a lot of you guys are coming from when it comes down to this type of stuff, and when it comes down to game journalism and everything like that. So if you guys can let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments, if you guys could like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you guys have been watching this long, I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And yeah, until next time, Harmonic out. Peace.